Union Budget 23-24. The Union Budget for 23-24 came against the backdrop of economic recovery and optimism in the midst of medium-term growth outlook, very good, despite persistent inflation and 1/3 of the economy in the world, particularly advanced economies, going into recession. So when the Honourable Minister presented the budget, she stated that Indian economy is resilience amidst multiple crises. Multiple crises, what she means, if I can venture to say, the crisis in the world economy, particularly in terms of very high inflation and massive recession taking place. And International Monetary Fund has released its World Economic Outlook on January 30th, 2023. They have said that the world economy, inflation is picking up. So what does this mean to Indian economy? This means to Indian economy, we will have spillovers from the downside risks of the world economy, particularly advanced economies, in terms of inflation and recessionary tendencies. If you look at the economic survey on the eve of the budget, they presented it, two messages are coming there. That our recovery is complete and our medium-term projection potential output is promising, 7 to 8%. So in many sense, India is a bright star, quote unquote, the world is saying. What is the focus of the budget? The focus of the budget is Saptarshi, as the Honourable Minister is saying. Out of the Saptarshi, 7 priorities, which we can call. The most important thing is our digital transformation and growth. So, let me now turn into the budget itself. The budget was presented amidst huge fiscal stress, which was resulted out of the pandemic, which remained more than 2 years, and the wave of pandemic is going down, but still it is there. Now, if you look at the budget, what they have done, they have corrected the fiscal deficit from 6.4 to 5.9% of GDP. Revenue deficit from 4.1 to 2.9% of GDP. The correction in the 1.1 has to remember, the correction in the revenue deficit has been budgeted by reducing subsidy. And if I quote the figure of subsidy, the total subsidy is now 3 lakh. Sorry. Mic गिर गया. Okay.
And like if you put your hand over the mic, आवाज नहीं आएगा, and if you touch it, वो touches.
Okay. No, mic को touch नहीं. Okay. So we will.
You can start from where you left.
Okay. So if I quote the figure.
1 second pause and then you start.
Okay. If I quote the figure, the total subsidy, food, fertilizer and petroleum, they were reduced to the extent of 39.2%. From a high level of 5,21,000 crore, it has become 3,74,000 crore budgeted. And the decline was 39.2%. But One point I would like to flag here. We have borrowed a huge amount during the pandemic. 9.2% 2021, 6.7% 21-22, and that resulted a huge debt in our economy. To that extent, interest payment has gone up. So the budget is facing a problem from interest payment. What is the level of interest payment now? The level of interest payment is huge, and that has gone up. I'll come back to that figure. What is the... Now everybody is talking about the capital expenditure. The budget has provided a large amount of capital expenditure to the tune of 3 point, let me see that figure. To the tune of 3.3% of GDP. I'll come back to this. The interest payment has increased by 14.8% and 3% of GDP. Capital expenditure current budget talks about 10 lakh crore with an increase of 37.4% from the revised estimate. And in terms of GDP is 3.3%. So this requires borrowing, and the borrowing of the government spent for capital expenditure will be nearly 59%. So 59% of the borrowing will come from capital expenditure, 41% will go for revenue expenditure. Now let me come to the tax side. There are some subs given in terms of slabs and all. I am not getting into this. So what has been done, the buoyancy, tax buoyancy has not gone up. This is a problem. If economy is doing good, the budget should have estimated little better tax buoyancy. Tax buoyancy is, for a common person, 1% increase in our economic growth. What is the percentage contribution to the tax? It is 0.99 as per the budget figure, nearly 1%. So that is not very encouraging. GST is a game changer. Tax buoyancy is 1.14. So my submission here is, tax buoyancy has to go up if economy is doing well and we are a bright star. That is not seen in the budget. Budget is conservative in that context. If tax buoyancy is not going up, then fiscal correction is slow. So that's a problem. Because we have committed with the FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, to reduce fiscal deficit to 3%. If it is 5.9 currently and 4.5 in 25-26, how number of years it will take. And please remember, we are on the nearly 2003 to 23, nearly 20 years of FRBM Act, but we have not been successful. So if the economy is looking good, we should have gone for more fiscal correction and consolidation. Because ultimately, fiscal deficit correction is important. If fiscal deficit is not corrected and we are going for higher borrowing, this leads to higher debt, interest payment, and very less resource available for developmental purpose. Another important issue which has not been debated, neither in the media, I have not seen this debate, that interest-free loan of 1.30 lakhs crore to the state governments in the interest of cooperative fiscal federalism. If we go back to our history of economic management, 12th Finance Commission recommended that, and for some time it was implemented also, states should go to market and borrow for its deficit. This loan from center, which is a financial intermediation, central government should not enter. But this has again came in. I understand for 22-23 this was required. But 23-24 budget should not have continued it. Because this is not the best interest of prudent fiscal management. Another thing I would like to say, in terms of deficit reduction, I would like to point it out that deficit like obesity. More deficit means the economy is becoming obese. And obese economy is not a healthy economy. Even if we are borrowing for capital expenditure, sometimes, if the analogy I gave, a obese person is not a healthy person. Similarly, an economy having a high fiscal deficit is not a healthy economy. If we claim, or the world has branded us as a bright star, we should have shown in our budget a sharper fiscal correction than what has been done. Because high fiscal deficit has inherent threats in terms of high debt, in terms of high inflation, and spillover to external sector. And many of the foreign direct investment we are getting now, we may not get if the high fiscal deficit continues. Another example I would say here, why the government will take the responsibility of growth when we have a vibrant private sector. Economic survey says that the twin balance sheet problem which you are having earlier, now it has been reduced, gone out. So if that has happened, if there is no stress on the balance sheet of the banks and balance sheet of the private sector, my considered view is private sector should take up growth. In this context, I will say Keynes' animal spirit. The private sector should come forward. Government will facilitate the growth. It should not be a part of growth. Government should not borrow even for capital expenditure, because even the borrowing for capital expenditure sometimes will be self-defeat it will face, because higher borrowing will create problem. Because capital expenditure, infrastructure expenditure has a long gestation lag, and to that extent, the return on capital is also important. So in summary, I would say the growth outlook is better, inflation is receding, and inflation expectation is well anchored. Monetary policy is playing a good role to manage inflation. Fiscal policy, my only submission in this context, should go for higher deficit correction if we believe deficit is bad in terms of higher interest payment, higher inflation, and higher spillover to external sector. So in one line conclusion I will make here, if economy is doing good, sharper fiscal correction and consolidation should have been there in union budget 23-24. Thank you.